In this first video vignette, we'll show you how we present the case conceptualization to our clients. This would take place in the second or third session. In this vignette, we assume that there has been an initial session that included an intake, a history, and where the therapist has already presented the overall model of behavioral activation and sent the client home with reading materials. The case conceptualization is important as an evidence-based process in behavioral activation and in other empirically supported treatments. The therapist presents the case conceptualization according to events that have occurred in the client's life over the past week. We make the case conceptualization relevant to the client's own experience. We'll also introduce concepts that are important in behavioral activation, such as acting from the outside in rather than the inside out, and how to follow goal-dependent rather than mood-dependent behaviors. Well, Max, it's good to see you again. Did you have a chance to read the paperwork that I sent you with? We had talked last week a lot about your history. We talked, if you remember, I talked to you about what behavioral activation is and the kind of way that I see your situation. But then I also gave you some paperwork to take home and read. Did you have a chance to look that over?
Yeah, I was able to look it over. I don't know that I went super in depth on it or really
that's great.
got everything.
Yeah. I wasn't intending for you to go super in depth on it. Did it make sense to you how it fits with your life and how we're going to proceed in terms of using activation as a way to help you with your depression?
Yeah, I think in a general sense it did. Yeah.
Okay. Any points that were confusing to you or any questions about any of it?
I guess a part of it was it seemed like a little, obvious isn't the right word, but that it's sort of, I guess a part of it for me was like, if I could just start doing these things, I would.
Sure, absolutely. I mean, if you could just, if it was as simple as just doing it, you would have done it a long time ago.
Yeah.
You're a smart guy. You would certainly have been able to do that on your own, which is why last time when I was talking about that I'm going to be acting as a coach for you, we don't really think that it's just as easy as just doing it. In fact, you've tried to just do it with some of these things, right? So you've been, when you get an email from your advisor, you could just send him back an email, right? If you could have done that, you would have already done it.
Yeah.
I like to say that the way we would work together, it's, in some ways it's simple, but it's not simplistic. And I make the difference in that the kinds of things we're going to do are simple. For you to do it, it's a lot harder when you're feeling as depressed and kind of down and shut down as you've been feeling. How has your mood been over the last week?
It has been great. Yeah.
Okay. Anything in particular going on that's different from what we talked about?
It's a lot of the same at this point. Yeah. It's just kind of, I think the toughest thing over the last week is just missing meetings with my advisor. It's probably that's the toughest thing that's been happening recently, but that's kind of been a pattern read. Yeah.
Right. So you actually had some meetings scheduled and then you didn't make it to them?
Yeah.
Okay. How often did that happen?
Over the last, I had one scheduled this week that I missed, and I missed one the week before.
All right.
And my advisor's been trying to get us to meet at least every other week, but I'd say I missed about half those meetings.
Okay. So you've been missing half of the meetings with your advisor. How do the interactions go? Like, how does are you in any communication with him at all, or are you just not showing up and there's no conversation or no interaction back and forth?
I typically try and send something, either, sometimes I don't like to do this, but I'll make up an excuse, I'll say, I'm not feeling well, or something came up, or something. So typically I'll try and, it's kind of last minute, sort of like right before. when I know I'm going to miss it, or once I've decided I'm not gonna go, I kind of try and send something. I have missed some outright and then sort of emailed afterwards, like, I'm really sorry I missed this, and trying to be apologetic. Yeah.
Okay. Right now, how's your relationship with your advisor? Like, are you sensing that they're starting to be concerned about how much you're missing? Have they made any mention of that?
It's kind of tense. I think that there's some worry about whether or not I'm going to be able to finish my dissertation at this point. I think it's gotten to the point where there's some worry among my committee, and my advisor is obviously sort of chairing my committee, and so that's, I think, becoming a concern for everybody.
Okay. So back to the notion that if you could just meet with your advisor, you would just do it, and that's not what we're doing here. So I'm going to just write on the whiteboard, if you don't mind. So I'm going to write 3 circles, and I'll explain what they all mean in just a second here. And then I'm going to tie all of this together as we talk about what you were experiencing this past week. If you remember last week, I talked about the cycles of depression, and I showed you kind of a broader picture. And we talked about how the things that you do, the things that you feel are all connected.
Yeah, they feed back into each other.
Yeah. And I want to talk a little further about that, but specifically because this works for things that happen every day in our lives, right? So I'm going to write here what happened. Okay? So last week when you were you had the appointment set up with your advisor, can you tell me what was going on that morning? You said that you intended to go, right? You had initially the intention to go, but then something happened and you didn't. So what happened that morning?
Yeah, I was trying to get some work done so that I would get enough done that I could come in and have some progress made. I just haven't made a lot of progress so far, and I just don't want to come in without that. I'm worried he'll be disappointed that I haven't gotten where I'm getting. It's like I said, kind of the committee, they're getting worried, so I want something to show for it.
Okay.
And I was just sort of reviewing what I had and trying to get started to maybe fill a gap in some way, and I just couldn't get started, and so I stalled.
Okay, so if we just write what happened, is it fair if I just write that you had an appointment scheduled and you hadn't gotten as much work done as you wanted? Is that right?
That's about right.
So I'm just going to write, I'll do a little abbreviating. So you had an appointment scheduled and I'll say not enough work.
Yeah,
is that fair?
That's a really good way to put it, yeah.
Okay. Not enough work done. All right. So you just said you were worried that your advisor was going to be disappointed in you. So is it fair for me to write here, if I say, how did you feel? Is it fair to write worried?
Yeah, I think that's fair.
Okay. Anything else you were feeling?
I felt really guilty.
Really guilty?
Yeah.
What was making you feel guilty?
Well,
what were you guilty about?
Well, that I hadn't gotten the work done. I mean, and that people were trying to help me, and I couldn't sort of step up to the plate and do my part.
Okay. Last time we were talking, you were saying that you've really been struggling with just not feeling motivated to do anything, and it really is taking a lot of effort. How did this all affect your motivation?
Yeah, I didn't really feel like doing anything at that point. It felt like I just looked at the amount that I would have to get done to bring something meaningful in, and it just seemed like there wasn't any point to starting.
Okay, so you had a thought What's the point?
Mm-hmm.
And then sometimes when people think, what's the point, they feel kind of hopeless or not feeling very, just feeling no energy to go forward.
Yeah.
Were you feeling any of that?
Definitely hopeless. Yeah.
Okay.
It definitely felt like this was just happening again and again, and there was nothing to be done about it.
Okay. I'm going to add something over here just because you also said that there was a lot to do. So even though we're outside of our little circle here, you also had a lot to do. Mm-hmm. Sorry, my writing's terrible there. What did you do? That's the third circle here.
At first, just not much of anything.
Okay.
I just sort of stared at. I had LaTeX open on my computer, and I just kind of stared. And I
so you were just there. You were just staring at your computer.
At my whiteboard, right? Yeah.
I'm sorry. You said at your whiteboard?
Yeah.
Okay.
I do topology, so a lot of what we do is drawing and thinking about shapes and things like that. So,
I see. So you were okay. You were staring at your whiteboard. Okay, and you didn't go to the meeting.
No, I didn't. Yeah.
Right. How did you get out of that?
I sent my advisor an email.
What did the email say?
I said that I had hurt my ankle that day, and so I wasn't going to walk into Kirchhoff, which is our math building.
Okay. Had you hurt your ankle?
I had not hurt my ankle.
Okay. So, is it fair for me to say that you made an excuse?
Yeah, I lied.
If it's okay with you, I'm just going to say you made an excuse.
Okay.
Okay. So when you then made the excuse, and it's understandable, right? You had a lot of work to do. You hadn't gotten as much done. You've been struggling. You've missed appointments. You've got this appointment scheduled. You start to feel worried that your advisor, your committee, that they're all going to be disappointed in you. I think most people feeling worried and guilty would have a really hard time actually going through and going to the meeting, right? Because these feelings almost dictate not doing it, right? And I'm going to just write here, we can refer to that as mood dependent. Does that ring true to you? Mood dependent behaviors?
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. Because it's kind of like when you're feeling all right, it's not as tough to do things. But
right. If you had gotten all of your work done,
yeah,
and you'd been meeting with your advisor regularly,
well, yeah,
would you be feeling worried and guilty?
No.
No, you'd probably be feeling maybe energized. Mm-hmm. It'd be easier to go.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Right. So with this mood, it made it harder to go. But when you sent your advisor the email, and as you said, you lied, you made the excuse. Did you feel any better at that point?
No.
No. What was the result then? We can say, then what happened? We can come back here.
I stayed home.
Okay. Yeah. So then you stayed home. What was happening with all these worries and feeling guilty and feeling hopeless?
Well, at first I thought to myself that I was going to get some work done at that point, that I would just take the day to catch up and reschedule and things like that. But then just none of it happened. I just felt worse because it was sort of like...
So I'm going to say you felt worse. It's kind of interesting because what you just said also, we can add to the what did you do. Mm-hmm. You kind of started to lie to yourself a little bit too, right? So how would we say that? You didn't really lie to yourself, but you were trying to talk yourself into getting more done?
Yeah, I sort of made plans, but I didn't followed through with them.
Okay. And then when you didn't follow through, what was your reaction to that in terms of what you were feeling at that point?
Yeah, all those feelings kind of.
Mm-hmm. I don't know about you. When I don't follow through on things, I also feel a little disappointed in myself.
Yeah. Well, yeah, that kind of guilty feeling was sort of what got the
So
worst.
I'll just put a little star. So I'm going to draw, just to keep this visual going. Certain things happen. We feel a certain way. We act in a mood-dependent way. And sometimes what makes sense for us to do actually makes us feel worse. Mm-hmm. Okay? And we could keep going throughout the day with this. That because once you started to feel worse, then what happened? You'd already stayed home.
Yeah.
Did you hear from your advisor?
Yeah.
Okay. What was his response?
He said we really need to schedule a meeting, that we'd missed a few, and it was pretty crucial that we meet in person soon.
Okay. We really need to. It's pretty crucial.
Mm-hmm.
We haven't met in a long time. Mm-hmm. That sounds a little bit like he was getting maybe a little anxious himself. We don't know because we aren't him, but.
Yeah, I think it felt like a lose-lose in that case, right?
Okay.
Like if I had shown up, he would have been upset because I hadn't gotten enough work done. But then not showing up upset him because I...
Okay. So maybe it's all we can say, because I don't know your advisor, mm-hmm. and we can't be in his head, is that at the very least he may have gotten concerned. Mm-hmm. Okay. So we can put, I'm just going to, right under our mood dependent here, your advisor gets concerned. That becomes another event that happens. Now your advisor is concerned about you. Mm-hmm. As we're talking about that even now, what's happening to you? What's going on? As you're sitting there and I'm pointing out that your advisor may be concerned.
It feels awful.
Okay. Okay, what do you feel like doing right now?
I don't know. I kind of want to apologize.
You kind of want to apologize?
Yeah, just for missing. I guess I hadn't really realized, every time I reschedule, it feels like a new thing, right? Mm. But whereas we're talking about it, it's right. This is not the first time this has happened. It's been a while, and it just feels like this whole process is a waste of his time.
Okay, so you're having a lot of thoughts too. Mm-hmm. You think you're more likely to just show up at his office tomorrow or this afternoon, even after we're done?
No, I don't know if I could see him.
Okay, so I'm just going to put here less likely to meet. All right. Now, I don't want to this looks like a pretty hopeless situation, right? We're not going to stop here, because the reason I'm doing all this is to show what happens when we are stuck in mood-dependent behavior, right? So you've been feeling depressed. It may start with, it started with your breakup, right? Your relationship ended. That really threw you for a loop. Is that basically when you kind of started on what we talked about last week and what it says in that pamphlet, the downward cycle?
Yeah, everything kind of got worse then. Things were not wonderful, but things got a lot worse.
And so a lot of this got worse because most of us, when we're feeling down, it's harder for us to do things. And so I'm calling that mood-dependent behavior. There's another term that I like to use, that we could say that all of this acting is acting from the inside out. If we think sort of metaphorically about what we feel as being the inside of us, right? So if you're acting from the inside, so let me just write up here, inside here, based on your feelings, out, and we're stuck in mood-dependent behavior, it can become a problem. Often if we act from the inside out, you and I were talking earlier, and you said, if you were feeling good, you would get the work done. If you had gotten the work done, you might have gone to see the advisor, and everything would be great, right? We're excited to see friends, so we call them up, right? Acting from the inside out is not always bad. When your mood, especially when your mood is depression as severe as yours has been, it gets us stuck. So if acting from the inside out, which is natural and which makes sense, is going to get you stuck, the way out of this is to act from the outside in. And by that I mean you act according to a plan or a goal rather than acting according to a mood. It's not easy to do, right? But that's what I'm going to be helping you do in terms of our work together. That's why, as I said earlier, and as I said last week, I'm going to work as a coach. It's like you and I together have to plan what the action's going to be from the outside, right? What steps can you take to go from having these appointments scheduled, having all these negative feelings, and then ultimately not going, to get you back moving forward where we will eventually get you to meet with your advisor. Maybe even get you to be playing soccer again. But if it was easy, you would just do it. So we're going to talk about ways that we can take some steps so you can begin to do these things that right now are really hard and probably feel almost gargantuan, and break it down so that you're not having to just do this thing that seems like it's feeling pretty impossible for you to do. What do you think about that?
Yeah, a part of me feels like other things might just get in the way in a way, sort of thing.
Like what?
I guess it's just I could meet with my advisor, but I still wouldn't have had the work done, kind of thing.
Sure.
Like it's just things that I've already started doing and set up it just feels like that the hole might be too deep to dig out of in this case.
Well, sure. I completely understand that it feels like the hole is too deep to dig out of. But if we could, what would, if I could make it all better, what would be the goal that you would reach right now? I don't mean ultimately like getting your doctorate. I know that's your goal. But just in this next week, what would be the goal?
Yeah, I guess in this next week, I'd like to have a meeting with my advisor.
Okay.
Where I could update him on the situation and at least know where I'm going next.
Okay. So if we're working together for you to work from the outside in, what we want to do is start to identify some steps you could take to act toward the goal, not toward the mood. So to turn this mood-dependent behavior around to be goal-dependent, we'll see it would be great if you met with your advisor. That's a good goal. Whether you reach that goal is not as important right now for our work together as us beginning to have you move forward. Okay?
Okay.
Does that sound reasonable to you?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, yeah, it sounds reasonable.
Okay.
Feels a little like it's a Band-Aid. Like,
feels like it's a Band-Aid.
Like the problem's kind of big. Like if I don't meet with my advisor, even if I'm moving forward, like is that enough?
In the long run, no.
Yeah.
I mean, we can't just keep working together and you never meet with your advisor. That would not really be, oh, actually though, that's a good point though. That would not be working from the outside in. Because I talked about the outside, I didn't talk about the in. So this is good for me to point out to you. The hope is that as you're taking these steps and acting, so instead of acting toward the mood, you're going to act toward the goal, that the more you act toward the goal, the better you're going to feel. So that right now you act from the inside out, you feel pretty lousy, so you don't do much. The hope is that as you begin to take steps to reach these goals, some of this guilt and worry and hopelessness is going to shift. And then, as you're feeling better, it's going to be easier to be meeting with your advisor. And hopefully, we can also talk about some things, just practical things, that you're going to need to do to perhaps repair the relationship that's going on or to help him to understand what's been happening for you in terms of not getting as much done.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Yeah.
All right. Great. Do you want to write this down? Do you want me to write this down for you, or would you like to write this down? Or
can I take a picture of it?
Sure.
Like just on my phone?
Sure. Because this would be good for you to just see this now as you look at this, because as we talked, you were saying it was making you, it sort of felt really bad. Mm-hmm. If you look at this picture, are you going to just be feeling even worse about this, or does this look, have I adequately described a way out for you?
I think I understand it, you know, like on the level that everything you're saying makes sense.
Okay.
I think seeing it all laid out was pretty tough.
Right.
Just in terms of, I guess, what I'm doing to not to make the situation worse. That was kind of tough. But I think this is helpful to just kind of have it laid out there, I guess.
Okay. So I want to be really clear, though. What you're doing is making the situation worse. Your phrasing just now was what you're doing to make the situation worse. I don't believe in any way that you're trying to make the situation worse for yourself. I think you're doing what feels natural to do. The problem is that makes the situation worse. Mm-hmm. And if you can rely on me to sort of help you do what's going to feel sort of unnatural and act from the outside in, I'm hoping that can turn this situation around.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Okay.
Yeah.
Great.
What did you notice about the ways that the therapist described the rationale for behavioral activation as very specific to Max's experiences? What were Max's hesitations about behavioral activation? What other challenges might clients raise as they learn about this treatment? How might you address those challenges?
There are a few things that we'd like you to take away from this video vignette. First, there is no prescription for how you write out the case conceptualization. I wrote it out as 3 circles stating what happened, how did you feel, what did you do. You may be in the habit of writing what happened, what did you do, how did you feel. You may write it in other ways. What's important is that you communicate well to the client the connection between the events that occur in their life, their activities, and their mood, and how mood and activities influence one another. One goal of presenting the case conceptualization is to increase the client's motivation for change. By validating the client's experience of how they respond to their feelings and engage in activities that keep them stuck in the depressive cycle, we try and increase motivation for change by providing hope that there are changes that can be made in activity that can result in breaking free from the cycle. Another important part of the case conceptualization is to establish client buy-in about the therapy. If you notice, Max was concerned that if he just needed to do more things, he would have already done them. We want to validate that experience by engaging in the reality of what the client experiences and letting them know that we understand how hard it is to change. We can increase the likelihood that clients will see the usefulness of this treatment and begin to collaborate with us and work together in making positive changes.